Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this spectacular round 6 game was played at the 1959 candidates between none other than Mikhail Tal and Bobby Fischer. You'll see how Tal deals with the King's Indian. So Tal starts off with d4, Bobby responds with knight to f6, the Indian defends c4 from Tal. And then Bobby prepares to flanker his bishop with g6 and castle to the king side. And Tal continues, developing knight to c3, so we have the King's Indian on the board. Bishop to g7 from Bobby. Tal dominating the center for the moment with e4. So 3 pawns in the center. We get d6 from Bobby, preparing either e5 or c5 center breaks in order to chip away at Tal's center pawns. Bishop to e2 from Tal. And we get castles and knight to f3. Continuing with development and preparing to castle as well. Bobby strikes at the center with e5. Tal closes the center with d5. And we get knight b to d7. A couple of things to note. 1. Looking at the pawn structure, black should attack towards the king side and white should attack towards the queen side. 2. The knight is controlling the very important c5 square. 3. The engine actually wanted a5 to discourage b4. Tal continues with development with bishop to g5, pinning the knight to the queen. h6 from Bobby hitting the bishop. Bishop slides back to h4, maintaining the pin against the queen. And we get a6, controlling and preparing b5. Not the b5 will be played, as the expansion should be on the king side for black. We get knight to d2, freeing up the f3 square. And some options to support c5 square are as follows. 1. Pushing f3 and then bishop to f2. And 2. Knight to b2 at some stage. And remember, the pawns dictate in which direction to attack. So now Bobby plays queen to e8, getting out of the pin. Tal castles, and we get knight to h7, freeing up the f6 square. Engine wanted g5 to kick the bishop and put it on an awkward square, as we saw in the other game as well. b4 from Tal, now we're supporting the very important c5 square. Knight to g5 from Bobby, and we see f3 on the board with the possibility to slide the bishop to f2 and support that c5 square. Bobby now advancing on the king side. We see bishop to f2 and now 2 defenders and 2 attackers on c5. Bobby adds a third attacker to the c5 square to discourage c5 from being played. And we get rook to c1 indirectly supporting c5. Here the engine actually wanted a3 to be played, but we get knight to f6 from Bobby, sort of abandoning the c5 square and preparing his own attack. c5 from Tal, and note black should not capture with a pawn because of the following. You get takes and you basically just lose material. So going back, so in the game we got bishop to d7, now controlling the c6 square, trying to discourage Tal from playing c6. Queen to c2, indirectly supporting the c6 push once the knight moves away. Knight to h5 from Bobby, creating some breathing space for his f rook. And we get b5 from Tal, and this is to support the c6 pawn push. Bobby releases the tension in the center and we get takes and takes and takes and takes, and knight to f4. Here the engine wanted a takes b5 in order to eliminate the defender of the c6 square and open the file for the rook. But then we get c6 from Tal, pushing the pawn into Bobby's territory. We get a mate in one thread from Bobby. Queen to g5, 2 attackers on the g2 square. Tal simply defends with bishop to f3, and we get takes and takes, hitting the bishop. Plays the best move, which is bishop to g4, eliminating the pieces around white's king. And we get takes and takes, again with a mate thread. Bishop to e3 from Tal, also making space for the queen to defend the g2 square, and also preparing to take out the pesky knight. So Bobby takes on b5, Tal takes the knight, and Bobby recaptures. Then Tal takes the pawn on b5, also hitting c7. And here we get the dual purpose, a rook to f7, 1 trying to make space to double the rooks on the f file, and 2 defending c7. We got queen to c4, pinning the rook to the king, and also note that due to the pin, the rook is not defending the c7 pawn anymore. So Bobby defends with a rook. We get a rook left from Tal, also blockading the pawn. Bishop e5, supporting the pawns on the dark squares. A rook c to f1, doubling up on the f file. Bobby unpins with a rook. Bobby then unpins the rook by playing king to g7, So the rook is again defending the c7 pawn. Tal pushes his pass pawn. The engine says that knight to d4 was the best in this position, but anyway. Bobby then puts pressure on the a pawn with the rook to a8. And now we get king to h1 from Tal. So this does two things. One, unpinning the pawn, and two, preparing to push g3 if black takes. There are 3 attackers on the f7 square. So a lot of pressure on the f-file. Here we get queen to g5, which is a mistake. Engine wanted queen to h5, and this is simply not to be on a forkable square. Now, due to the pressure on the f-file, black's f-pawn is sort of pinned. And now Tal goes g3, trying to open things up on the f-file for his rooks to get more active. And Bobby adds an attacker to the f-file, so both players have their rooks stacked on the f-file. Tal takes, hitting the queen and the bishop. And just to reinforce that for this exact reason, queen to g5 was a mistake earlier on from Bobby. And ladies and gentlemen, we get blunder number 1 from Bobby. Engine wanted queen to g4, and we can now see why the queen does not belong on g5. So just going back quickly, if we play queen to g4, and obviously here white should not take because you just in a lot of trouble. Mate 3, and you're getting mated. So going back to the blunder. In the game, we then got the best move from Tal, threatening a fork on e6 to win the queen, and another reason why queen to g5 was a bad move. We get queen to h4 to avoid the fork. Tal first takes, and note if the queen recaptures, the same knight fork is still there. So we get takes on f4 with a rook from Bobby. Now knight to e6 check. The king has 3 main moves. If we first look at king to g8, you know, we sort of get the following. So this is all bad for black, and you're simply down a piece, and queen coming in with a check, you're up 9.8 on the bar. So going back, if you played king to h7, we've gotten the following. King to h7 just loses on the spot with knight takes on f8 check, takes, and takes with mate and 11. So just to quickly play that out for you, that's mate 2, mate in 1, and mate. So going back, in the game we got king to h8, and now you first give a check on d4, and we get a rook 8 to f6, blocking with a check. Now mate is unavoidable. Rook 4 to f6 was a bit better. Tal takes, but taking with a knight was a mistake, as Tal now lost the forced checkmate sequence. A rook taking on f4 was best. King unpins with king to h7, e5, hitting the rook, and checkmate again is now unavoidable. Rook to f8 was best, and Tal found the best move, ladies and gentlemen, with queen to d7 check, and Bobby resigned in this position as it's mate in 11, which could have played out as follows. So simply just dominating that. The stunning, beautiful mate. Hope you enjoyed the video. Please consider subscribing if you liked the video. Thank you.